sit in roomy chalets, talk of crowded slums, cut and slice with bitter tongues. But what do we do? We stand in crowded subways, thinking God is near, afraid of thoughts of other men. But what do we do? We stand in country colors with flowers in our hands, thoughts of stones and highness. But what do we do? What do we do? Sitting in warm homes, speaking profundities, selecting passages, annotating reasons. What do we do? Do we start here with ourselves?
I guess I'm a typical middle-class product. I grew up in a suburb in the Bay Area, and from my early years in high school, I planned to go to college to study engineering. I attended Stanford for 5 years, and then I landed the job I've held for the last 3 years. I was always sure that if I went into engineering, I'd be able to get some kind of a draft-deferred job. My job title is research analyst. This is a professional position in which I've been doing systems cost estimating. The systems I work on might be ballistic missile systems or communication satellites or radar networks of one kind or another. But they all involve huge expenditures of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. My job is to predict accurately what these systems will cost. This involves using the tools of cost analysis and systems analysis, such as cost modeling, simulation, operations research techniques of one kind or another, and cost effectiveness analysis. Very often we use online timeshare computers to build mathematical models of the systems we're studying. Most of the projects that come into my company are funded by the federal government, and the biggest chunk of federal research money comes from the Department of Defense. The result is that most of the systems I've worked on have been weapon systems. From a professional point of view, this work has been very rewarding. And this is true throughout the entire defense industry. Defense work is very interesting because it involves highly sophisticated engineering systems. But a little over a year ago, I began to be troubled about the nature of the work I was doing. I never have liked the military very much, but that was mainly an emotional reaction against the dehumanization you go through in becoming a soldier. I felt that the military was one of those necessary evils that we have to live with, and that war, for that matter, is a necessary evil. Well, the Vietnam War was in full swing at this time, and it really confused me. I didn't know how to react to it. I got in various discussions with my co-workers, but their arguments failed to convince me that the war was justified. About this time, I went to hear a speech by Joan Baez and Ira Sandpearl on nonviolence. They said a lot of things that really made sense to me, and for the first time I felt I had heard what was a rational and not just an emotional argument against war. At this time, I was working on a project studying some electronic equipment that might be used on U.S. aircraft. This project was a direct response to the needs of the military in Vietnam. Ironically, this project was the most challenging and most exciting I had worked on in terms of the analysis that I performed. But when I found myself working with a map of North Vietnam to perform theoretical calculations of the effectiveness of this equipment, I felt too close to the war. I had to take a stand either for or against the war at this point. I made my decision and shortly thereafter quit the project. At work, I tried to be involved in studies of defensive rather than offensive systems just to satisfy my own reservations about contributing to the killing of other human beings. But I began to realize more and more that it just didn't make any difference. Both offensive and defensive systems are contributing towards the same end, and that's the murder of our fellow men. Work became more and more difficult for me, For instance, I put this poster on the wall in my office, and my boss took it down and said that it was in poor taste and that it might offend some of our clients. As part of my investigation of nonviolence, I took a course at the Mid-Peninsula Free University called Peace Games. It's styled after the war games held in the military, except we wanted to experiment with a defense which does not rely upon armies or violent weapons, but which is based on nonviolent resistance. The course ended with a weekend-long socio-drama held in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where we attempted to defend an area against an aggressive invader. We attempted to combat the invaders with love, truth, honesty, and friendliness. This was quite a task. The invaders usually had physical control of the situation, but I think we made some remarkable achievements. Within the context of the game, we came very close to persuading 2 of the invaders to desert to our side. We also had a fairly good survival rate. Only 1 out of 21 of us was killed, and that was when he refused to sign a loyalty pledge to the invaders.
The exercise is over. Go up to the dining room.
I think it's not so much the problem of finding out what they're doing, but trying to get them to figure out why they're doing it, and to get them to grapple themselves with the moral questions involved, not just the political questions. And it's apparently just the financial questions that upset them. But I think hopefully we can get them. We can appeal to them at first from a moral point of view, even if we can't win them politically. What is my role as a Stanford student? I could just sort of wander through here for 4 years or however long I wish and not really care, and it wouldn't really involve me that much. It wouldn't affect my life as it's affecting a lot of lives in Southeast Asia. But you begin to wonder whose university it is and whether you do indeed have a role in this kind of thing. And I've decided that obviously I do, I must. Because
Well, really the reason I quit my job is because I believe in America and the things that America stands for. And I think these things are basically freedom and democracy. And I feel that our present military system is subverting these values and these ideals. And I felt that while I was continuing to work in the defense industry, I was contributing towards the subverting of these values and ideals. And I feel that nonviolent defense is a very good way to go about defending our ideals without subverting them.
And I think it relates to the same thing that a lot of us learned last year in the sit-in. That contrary to what we're told time and time again, that confrontation really increases, not decreases, real communication between the constituencies involved here. Right? He's got to get somebody. He can't support himself in doing it. So he goes out and decides where he's going to get support. Well, the plain fact of the matter is that the military has most of the money.
You want to ask the gentleman a question about the reputation?
Actually, and this is weapon systems analysis and evaluation.
Of course.
I mean, so that when you say that you are not aware of whether biological and chemical warfare research is being done, then you're implying that one of the assumptions of the Institute is that it's nobody's business except the people who are engaged in that project and presumably some part of the management structure.
I have no knowledge of it.
That you have no knowledge.
I have no knowledge of it.
I think it's accurate to say that Vietnam made a pacifist out of me.